Oh my, what a blessing. What a beautiful day and a beautiful family that we've been able to celebrate. By the way, did they mention that Ada and Val have prepared a beautiful lunch for us? It's amazing. We've had this blessing of music, of scripture, of bringing little Yagazi to our church to welcome her. And now you have to sit through my long, boring sermon, but the advantage of staying and listening is that in about half an hour, there will be a meal out there that will be an absolute feast that was prepared by Ada. So I hope you enjoy it. And so just tell yourself, if the sermon is boring, there's something good. Actually, what we need to do, Ada is probably busy at the back, but I wanted to say to her, she needs to not wait too long before she brings baby number 4. Because what a blessing to have our church filled up and get it all together. So I think she will curse me when I said that, but I should pick somebody else, you say. No, so that was just an evil thought that came into my mind. I sometimes say the evil things that come into my mind. Yeah. Actually, I have a serious topic to talk about today. I think it's serious. I think it's perhaps a really important topic for the time that we're living in. But so we're talking about connection. And I want to talk about making a connection or becoming an ambassador. Now, I don't know if you remember this week, there was an issue of an ambassador. Was it the UK ambassador got, not the UK ambassador, the Israeli, the Iranian ambassador got summoned because of something that they were doing, and there was a discussion, and and people are not happy. But the point of the ambassadors is that sometimes when things are quite stressful and when things aren't working out in terms of relationships, ambassadors are there to build bridges. And so let me just read that scripture one more time, and then let me ask you now already, think about a situation that worries you, where you might want to build a bridge. It could be a family member. It might be that you might have a brother or a sister that you haven't spoken to for a while. Does that happen in the situations? It does, doesn't it? I see brother preacher sitting there. He says, I'm here to build it. No, I'm not just picking on you without any story. But all of us have that kind of situations. But it could also be the kind of situation that we have in our community. You know, I'm just back from a Pathfinder camp where several of our young people were as well. A lot of our young people, more than 26. And at the end of the Pathfinder camp, something happened in Wales because the local community there saw a bunch of strangers that they didn't know anything about, and they suddenly jumped to a conclusion that we're being invaded by refugees or asylum seekers. And it ended up in quite a confrontation right at that campsite with local people coming and making attacks. And, you know, it made newspaper headlines right around the country. It wasn't, our church wasn't mentioned, it was just mentioned as a scout group from Scotland. Even though the funny thing is Scotland had already left by the time that the confrontation took place. So fortunately, it wasn't there. But we live in a community where even our own Prime Minister will make a speech and says, we are about to become a nation of strangers. Do you remember he says that? What do we as Christians do in a situation like that? Isn't our job to not be strangers, to actually build relationships? Let me read scripture. But one more thing, just one more application. So you can pick any of these applications. The other application is we are a church who believes in the love of Jesus. And we want to tell other people about the love of Jesus. And there's one way of doing it. We can be like guerrilla fighters. We can be unseen and unknown, and we can just pop out. And when nobody's looking, even in the middle of the night, we'll put a little book through their door and hope that they'll be able to read it, and then we disappear again. I know I'm overstating it. Or can we be people who build relationships with others, that we build bridges, and it's that relationship that bring people back to God and to us. And so let me read 2 Corinthians 5, verse 18 to 20. Now all things are of God, and what has God done? He has reconciled us to himself through Jesus Christ. So what does God do? He reconciles us. He brings us together where we might have been distant from each other. But listen to the next one, and this is where it's so important. He has given us a ministry of reconciliation. What has he given us? A ministry. In other words, he sent us with standing orders, with orders to go out and do what? We have to reconcile. Now, you have a brother that you haven't spoken to for a while. We live in a community where people we've got one church member who works in an asylum seeker hotel. He's a worker. And just in the last few weeks, there's been protests outside of his hotel telling people, you're not welcome there. What do we do when we've got a ministry of reconciliation? How do we respond? Let me read further. So God has given us a ministry of reconciliation. That is, that God was in Christ reconciling the world to himself. And then he says, not imputing their trespasses to them. That's a big word. That's why Kenny had a bit of a hard time reading this big word, imputing. I should have given him an easier one. When you want to reconcile, you don't always allow the things that make you differ from each other to stand in the way of reconciliation. Your trespasses aren't counted against you always. But here it is, Christ has committed us to the word of reconciliation. So he's committed us to speak reconciliation. Last verse. Now then, we are ambassadors for Christ, as though God were pleading through us. And we implore you on Christ's behalf to be reconciled to God. So that's just the beginning. And what I want to do in the next few minutes is to actually run with you through some notes that I have about how can we be ambassadors. Let's call it the Ambassador Boot Camp. And I have two young people in the church who is going to hand out a little handout for you. You can choose if you want to take it. There is also on the screen, there will be a picture that you can scan a QR code and you can download this document that we have just to help you. And my promise to you is when it hits 5 minutes to 12, I will stop, even if we haven't finished what's in the screen on the sheet of paper. So let's just see. There's I wonder if it will come up on the PowerPoint where you can scan it. Otherwise, you can go to aberdeensda.org/download. That's the name of the website, and you can actually download this article. So if you're following online, you go to aberdeensda.org/download, and you'll be able to get the document that you've got over there. So shall we, let's see, while they're busy handing out, just keep a lookout. what we can do is let's move on and let's start, because I've got a lot of material, but I promise you when 5 to 12 comes, 5 to 1 comes, I will stop. Okay. Okay. She will tell me. She's our timekeeper. We will just go like that. Yeah. The first... so let's think about somebody that you haven't spoken to for a while. What do you think the most important thing is that they would want to know about you in order to make them soften down to you, or to make you feel like they can actually listen to you? And there's 3 things that we have. The first one is, do you value me? In other words, do you care for me? Do you like me? You hear that? If you know that somebody values you and cares for you, and that somebody likes you, how do you feel towards them? You almost always feel better to them. And so I would say the very first thing that you always need to have in your mind when you want to reach out to somebody is to answer this question: have I showed them that they mean something to me, or that I care for them and that I love them, that I like them? Or do they think that I don't really like that person? You know, a young person often comes to church and it's like the only thing that the older people tell the young people is, keep quiet, stop moving around, stop doing this, don't stand in that place, don't go over there. Does that communicate the message of, do you value me? Or imagine if a young person can come to church and it is like, it's so good to see you here. You're making a real contribution. And by the way, we're going to do some fun things with you. Do you understand the difference? How do you value? Here's the second thing that people want to know. Can you help me? Has everybody got one of the forms? Can you help me? I have to admit that I'm a little bit like that. I had a problem in my house a few weeks ago. Well, do you know I had a problem the whole of last year? Because whenever I tried to switch the heating on in my house, the whole house would warm up except for the one heater that is in the stairwell of my house. Now, if you know about it, that heater is often the biggest heater, the biggest radiator, because it fills up the biggest part of the house. It warms it up. And for some reason, whenever I switch on the heating, all the other radiators come on except for that stairwell radiator. And I contacted 2 boiler service people, and they just ignored me. They didn't come. And I was busy and I didn't do anything. So for the whole winter last year, I was struggling to warm my house up. The other day, I was just walking down the street and I saw somebody with a boiler repair sign on their car, and I went and walked up to them and I said, "Can you come and help me? Will you just come and service my boiler? I need to." And I loved that person. I wanted to reach that person because he could do something for me. And he said yes, he could come, and he came and serviced the boiler. The boiler was in perfect condition. And then he discovered that somebody had actually turned that radiator off. They had just, and I remember what happened. My shower had broken a few weeks earlier. A year ago, my shower broke. And a plumber had come in to replace the pump for the shower. And when he was replacing the pump for the shower, he closed the boiler and not the boiler, the radiator, to prevent the water from leaking out while he was replacing the pump. And he never undid that. So for a whole year, I was suffering in the cold but I loved this person that I met because he could do something for me. And so here is the question. If you want to become an ambassador, you want somebody to warm up to you, What is one of the things that you should answer? Can you help me? In other words, can somebody help you? I think that's really important. And so if you think of who is it that you would like to reach out to, who would you like to connect with? Do they know that you value them? Do they know that you could possibly help them with something? Do you have something that they want? And then the last one is a really important one. Can I trust you? So I don't have to say a lot about trust, but if somebody comes up to me and they say, well, trust can go two ways. They say, can I tell you something? And then they tell you something, and then the next moment, everybody knows what they told you. Does that build trust? Doesn't really work very well. Another way that trust can work is if you promise to do something for somebody but you never do it. You've had that experience. I've had that experience. I've tried to get 2 boiler service people to come out and they just didn't respond. You know what, I'm not going to phone them again because I don't trust them. But now I've met this one guy and I really value him because he just fixed my problem for me, made my life better, and he pitched up when I needed him. I can trust him. And so I've got a good relationship with him on that. So shall we move on? Because I'm sure you want to hear some more, and I don't have to explain it all in such details. So let's talk for a moment about wanting to build common ground or wanting to build a bridge. What are the stuff that prevent us from doing it? What are the barriers that prevent people? So there are things that make it more difficult for you to connect to somebody. And the first one is assumption. Okay, I assume. And what does the word assumption mean? It means I already know what other people know or want or feel. I wonder if you've ever had that happen to you. I admit to you that I've got that weakness. I was talking to a very trusted colleague of mine the other day about a pastoral situation that I didn't quite know how to deal with. And I just wanted to wade in into that situation, and I wanted to give all my details and information. And you know, my colleague, he actually said to me, have those people asked you for your help? And you know, I realized that actually nobody asked me for that help. I just assumed that they needed that help. And he saved me from an embarrassing situation, because I've had that situation in the past where I will just wade in and I think there's an issue that needs to be dealt with. And actually the people didn't even want to deal with that issue at that time. They didn't want to be confronted or even they didn't really feel they needed to talk to me. I just assumed they needed me to be involved. So you can assume, and that can create a barrier. And I'm learning that. I haven't mastered it yet. But the question is, what do you assume about other people? As a church, we often do this, by the way. We say to ourselves, we need to do some outreach. Let's start a soup kitchen, because everybody needs a soup kitchen. But we're assuming everybody needs a soup kitchen, because when I wonder if you spend any time here in the city and you realize that there's almost every day there's a group of Christian people who walk through the city streets with a beautiful trolley full of soup, and every homeless person gets a meal from them. So we make an assumption that we need it, but we haven't actually found out, is it really what people need? And that's an important thing. Let's move on. Arrogance. Have you felt arrogance? Do you know what it feels like when somebody is arrogant, when they think they know everything? I knew that BBC Radio 4 didn't have a lot of news this week because they had a conversation in the morning about mansplaining. You know what mansplaining is? Apparently, I'm quite good at it. um, you know, when you just walk up to somebody and you assume that you know everything and that that person doesn't know anything, and you start explaining something to them. Meanwhile, they might actually have a PhD in the degree that in the issue that you want to talk about, but you're giving that information to them. It's easy. It's amazing how easy it is for you and me to spot when somebody is being arrogant towards you. You can see it from an absolute mile away. And it's just amazing that we don't always realize how arrogant we can be when it comes to things. And so sometimes it's always interesting to become inquisitive about somebody's life, but not to necessarily be arrogant about it. I have do I move on? Let me move on. I've got a story to tell, but we can tell the story. Let's go to the other one because we've got 5 more minutes. And another barrier is indifference. Indifference. I don't care to know what other people know or feel or want. So sometimes as a church, we just live happily in these 4 walls that we have. But do we ever actually pay attention to the life that is happening around us? Let's take it to where you live. You're so busy moving to work and coming back, taking children to school, coming back. Do you know who it is who lives next to you and what is happening in their lives? I think you've maybe felt it that other people don't really care about who you are. But if we are ambassadors, do we actually care about where those people are going and what their interests are and what they want to be? So by not reaching out, by not having conversations, or by not running things that connect well with where people are struggling, that in itself becomes a barrier. In other words, if you want to be an ambassador, you need to actually take an interest in what's happening in the life of the person who you want to reach. If it's a brother that you haven't spoken to, well, you could take an interest in a gossipy way. Oh, what has he done again? Look at that. Or you can just walk up to them and put everything aside and just be really interested in what is happening in their life and what they are doing and what's important for them, what are the struggles that they have. And if we can overcome indifference, it might be that broken relationship can be renewed. And the final barrier that I have is control. I don't want others to know what I know, feel, or think. Have you done that before? As Seventh-day Adventists, sometimes in the past we would run big evangelistic campaigns. And I remember there would be this real concern. Do we tell people that we are Seventh-day Adventists? And sometimes you even say, no, you don't want to, because people hear the word Seventh-day Adventist and then they think, oh, those are really strange, funny people. I wonder how many of us sitting here had that experience, who they are. And then you come in and you realize how nice and warm they are. And so then sometimes you do this evangelistic campaign and you talk about things, but you never tell them who you are. I don't think we do that anymore. I don't think it really works. But it is an effort to try to control other people's perceptions. Sometimes I think it's better for us just to say who we are and who we are, what our beliefs are, and be proud of it and confident, and let other people choose how they respond to us rather than to control what we are. So, so maybe a question I could ask you. So there's those 4 barriers that we've gone through. Which one do you think you might have a challenge working with for yourself? Do you assume things about people? Are you arrogant? Are you indifferent? Do you have control? Let me run, and I did promise 5 minutes, and I'm going to keep to my promise. So how are we going to do this? Because I want to finish one more section, and then I'll be finished. Then we can pick up on the rest at another time. I don't have to say everything in one session. How can we find common ground through the choices we make? So now we're going to start building bridges. And the first one is be available. Availability. So I will choose to spend time with other people. Truth of the matter is, if I don't spend time with the person I want to build a bridge with, if I don't make myself available, if I don't answer that phone call, if I don't respond to a text message, if I'm not close by, it will not be possible to build a bridge. Make myself available. The second one, listening. I will listen my way to common ground. Rather than to speak, I will take some time and I will listen. I will hear what they say. I have 2 friends that I spend a lot of time with. We've got a little Facebook group, 2 pastor friends. And sometimes I will just tell them what is happening in my life, and they won't respond, and I wonder, do they even read what I say? And then about 10 days later, a comment will come that says that they have actually heard what I said, and it will actually be a comment that says they're interested in what I've done because they had taken time to listen, and they have just chosen the right time to come and make a comment rather than to just you don't have to always respond when somebody says something. Sometimes you just have to listen. The next step to listening, number 3, is ask questions rather than to make statements. Because people will become interested in you when you start asking them questions, because you tell them that you are interested in them by asking questions. Do we ask good questions from people? There are some people that I know who are really good at asking questions. Next one, 4, thoughtfulness. So when I'm interacting with somebody, I will think of others and I will look for ways to help them. Because sometimes somebody will just tell you something and you will continue with your life. But imagine if you actually listened to them, and then you went home and you spent some time thinking about what they told you. And as you think, you can even pray. You can say, God, what can I do in this situation to make that person's life better? Next one, 5, openness. I will let people into my life. And the question is, how open are we as a church family to have people come as they are into our worship services and into our meetings? Are we open? Are we open to just accept somebody for who they are, invite them to our house for a meal, or even just open to listen to their story, even if we don't have the same one? The next one, likability. I will care about people. And sometimes as pastors, we say to ourselves, I don't need to be likable. As long as I can tell everybody what they need to do, then I'm doing God's work. But can you actually do God's work if you can't build a relationship with people? And 2 more, and then, man, I want to tell you more things, but humility. I will think of myself less so that I can think of other people more. Humility. Humility is not thinking of ourselves as less, but it's thinking of other people more. Okay? So I can still be very proud of myself and happy in what I do and sure what I do, it's important, but I think of other people more than I think about myself. And it's a solid biblical principle. Without humility, we will not learn anything. We cannot learn the lessons that God wants us to share. Humility and learning go hand in hand. We have an education Sabbath once a year that we haven't quite gotten off the ground in Aberdeen, but that would be a good topic. How do I learn? I learn by being humble. And then the last one, adaptability. I will move from my world to their world. So how can we be adaptable in some ways without compromising our own values? Okay, so there's a challenge. I can be adaptable without compromising my values. In the Bible, there's a story of Paul who goes to this city, and he sees there's an idol over there that everybody worships. It's like an idol to the unknown God. And you know what Paul does? He says, they obviously value that. And so he starts preaching his sermon. He says, oh, there's an idol to an unknown God. I want to tell you who that unknown God is. And so what Paul does is he adapts his message so that it makes sense to those people for where they are. Right, it's 5:2. I have to keep to my word. There's one more thing I want to say. Can I, just one more thing? Yeah. The 101% principle about finding common ground. You know, there can be 100 things that we disagree on, but there can be one thing that we do find that we have in common. So if you want to build a bridge, you forget about the 100 things that you disagree on. You don't have to fix that at all, but you spend 100% of your time on the one thing that you can agree on. And you know what you're doing then? You're busy building a bridge. Because if you spend the time on the things that you agree on, you build that likability, you build that love, you build that sense of value. And what that does is it creates a foundation, and then it allows you to push your arm out in a territory which is a little bit less secure, but you've got a strong base from which to start with. And that's how you build a bridge. So spend 100% of your time on the 1% that you can agree on, rather than to spend all your time on the things that you don't agree on. Do you think that could work? I'm going to stop. We have to come up and sing a song, and later on I'll find a way to share with you some of the other ideas. I hope you found this meaningful. Thank you.